Hello, everybody, and welcome to No Shots Fired, episode 34 of the podcast, The Count of Dave Matthews. Now, I know the backstory behind this, but Junkblade, why don't you let the people know?
Well, Doc, as our audience knows, we spend lots of time thinking up these episode titles. So, tonight's title is inspired by me spending roughly 2 minutes Googling things about the number 34 and how that is significant to things. And number 34 is what they referred to Edmond Dantes in the Chateau d'If in The Count of Monte Cristo. And it's also a song by the Dave Matthews Band.
See?
Thank you, Wikipedia, for all this information.
And that's 2 fun facts for people 2 minutes into the podcast. What a clip that we're on already. So, once again, we are without our host and third member, Valen, continuing the Battle of Los Angeles, which I think is another movie, but we wish him well, and hopefully he will be back next time. But
hopefully.
We must... The show must go on.
The show must go on. Or otherwise it will grind to a halt, and we want this thing to live.
We enjoy doing it, so the way to keep that going is to keep doing it. So
exactly. So, it seems first on our list of topics tonight is Titanfall 2.
Yes.
Would you like to go over that real quick?
I would, okay. So Titanfall 2, first-person shooter, I believe. It might be exclusive to Xbox, which is a rare dove these days. But good shooter. Really fun kind of combat because you can summon a mech that you hop in and then stomp around and lay waste to things. But the mode I was playing in particular that got me back into it because it's a little older game. It was called Frontier Defense. Now this is it's one of those co-op kind of horde modes. And my brother-in-law had started playing it. And suggested I give it a go, and so we played a few rounds of it, and it was a good time. One of those things where you can. I like multiplayer modes that you can kind of feel like you're contributing, even if the level disparity is pretty crazy. So it was it's well designed in that aspect of it. Also, you can it's one of those things where it's a wave based thing, but you can also purchase static defenses and slight upgrades and stuff to kind of flesh out the experience a bit. So that was a good time. And I've heard, I've been meaning to complete the campaign itself for that game because I've heard it's actually very good. And very good shooter campaigns aren't super common.
No.
So I've heard one level in particular is pretty fantastic with how it's designed. So I need to give that a go, and if I ever get around to that, and if you've been listening to the last 2 episodes of the podcast, you know what the chances of that are based on the games I haven't played. But it was good. Kind of good to see that, you don't hear much about that game at all, but we had no trouble finding a game, and so hopefully, I like seeing games kind of continue on a bit. Past their prime, but I assume you have not touched or looked into Titanfall at all, Junkblade, with your relative
not at all
to say disinterest in the first-person shooter genre as a whole, if I'm describing that correctly.
You are. They've just never struck me as all that fun to play by myself, and by myself is usually the way I play games. So the one exception being the Metroid Prime series.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one, a fantastic game, but 2 kind of designed like that, right? So.
Yeah, it's definitely designed differently than I would assume Titanfall is, or, say, Overwatch or Halo.
Just a bit. Have you played the other 2 Prime games, or no?
I've played Metroid Prime. Metroid Prime 2 is the only one I haven't completed. I've beaten 2 and 3. 1 and 3.
Oh, okay, cool. Would you say that 2 and 3 are worth playing and completing?
Like I said, I haven't completed 2, so I can't say in regards to that. I just didn't find it at the world as interesting as 1. And then 3, it was fun playing on the Wii because you had the motion controls gimmick, which made it a little bit more engaging in that aspect.
I did hear that was kind of a good implementation of that. Like, it was fun to play Metroid Prime with kind of that aiming system.
It absolutely was. And as for Metroid Prime 2, it just felt like a very large jump from 1 to 2, and I just don't like 2 as much as a result. Plus, it has that problem of you just get to a certain point, and you either have to give up or look how you're supposed to progress online, and I hate having to look how I'm supposed to progress online.
Okay. And that's 2 is the light dark world kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I could see that you could get twisted around pretty bad there. Okay, I also like the Prime series is interesting because Metroid just seems like a tough, and I guess there is a continuous thread, but it doesn't feel like it as much, at least in the games I've played. Like there's kind of like vague connections to the previous games, but when it's like a very definite connection like Prime 1 through 3, Metroid just kind of seems like a tough game to pull that off. Because of kind of the solitary nature of it and kind of the lack of overt storytelling, it's tough to kind of keep a thread all the way through, at least for me. Maybe I'm a simpleton in that way, but... Okay. I actually have I think I've got the Prime collection on Wii, so I can play all 3 of them with that aiming.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I beat Metroid Prime 1, but not the other 2. So.
What was your least favorite part of Metroid Prime 1?
Probably the final boss fight, where you had to get into those like specific spots.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that.
I did not do well with that. Is what I can say about that. That did not go well for me. But no, yeah, Titanfall 2, good, enjoyable. Although I would say it's I would agree with you that playing by myself, I probably would not play it much other than that campaign I was talking about. But the multiplayer, if you've got 1 or 2 friends, that's those kind of horde based modes are always a lot of fun. Because you don't get super upset about 12-year-olds just wiping the floor with you. So that's good.
Yeah.
Less having to look into the twisted mirror of reality. So, all right, I believe we can move on to another 2 game, and you may have introed this game before, but maybe a little more deep dive into Divinity 2. And I didn't bother typing the other part of the name, so you should probably tell.
This Divinity 2 is the game Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, not Divinity Original Sin 2, which I imagine
I'll make it clearer
here. Might confuse some people. All 2 of our actual viewers. Anyway, this is a game that was on my list of I'm ashamed that I haven't actually beaten this game.
Oh, yes.
List. And I've made decent progress in it, again. I'm pretty close to the end, or rather, the initial end, and then there's like a DLC afterwards that's a continuation of the story. And the DLC afterwards shouldn't be too much of a pain to deal with. I think I've got 6 or 7 hours left in the game.
Okay. Do you know when this Divinity 2 came out?
Yeah, 2012 or 13.
Oh, really? Okay. Thank you, Gnomish Wanderer, for the follow. Our numbers increase by 1. Climb to the top continues. Really? That's...
Wait, no.
Okay.
2009.
Okay.
Subtitled, Ego Draconis, the updated 2011 re-release, the Dragon Knight Saga, which included the expansion Flames of Vengeance, and then the one I'm playing right now, the final 2012 release, which is Divinity 2 Developer's Cut. which gives you a developer screen where you can just like give yourself all categories of an item, or make yourself invincible, or go to a certain NPC, or open any nearby lock, or a couple of other things.
Okay. God mode.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It makes playing through the game again not as much of a pain when you've already played it through like 2 or 3 times without finishing it.
that's fair. That's actually kind of a smart way to do it, because like if you've written like a cool story or something that you want people to experience, but also made that really intense RPG, giving people that option
Yeah,
is kind of nice.
it is very much a grind if you do it legitimately, and given that I've already done it legitimately for the most part, I feel like, yeah, what's the point?
So now, do you? I say we may not know this, but is it the same developer that's done the new ones, or is it switched?
I would assume so. Larian Studios.
Why did they not do
Let's
the
see.
numbering or something?
Divinity Original Sin. Yep, Larian Studios still.
What are they doing? Although I guess it's Divinity Original Sin 2 is the second one, so maybe.
Yeah, there's Divinity Original Sin and Divinity Original Sin 2, neither of which I have played yet.
I've played the first one a few hours. That would be that's a co-op one.
Okay.
Same with the second one. They're both very highly regarded in circles I've run in. So that would be one I know, and Valen was always bugging me about giving that another go. So that may be something you too will have to play.
Yeah, I will have to consider picking it up sometime. So Divinity, not Divinity Original Sin, Divinity 2, Ego Draconis. I'm getting my wires crossed now.
See, it is confusing.
Yes, it is very confusing, and that was my point and why we had to write Divinity 2, not that Divinity 2. So, the story, since I assume the people watching and you are not going to actually play the game at this point.
Probably not.
Or even if you are, you're not going to care that much about the story. So, you start out as an initiate into the Order of Dragon Slayers.
Mm.
And you do a couple of quests around the first area in the game, as you do in an RPG.
Yes.
Eventually, in order to progress the game, you have to ignore your commander's orders and go to encounter the last dragon that they are aware of.
Okay, so a soon-to-be defunct Order of Dragon Slayers.
Yes. Turns out this is not an actual dragon, but a thing called a Dragon Knight, which is a human that can turn into a dragon.
Well, that's cool.
And then you encounter her just as she's dying, and and because you are still an initiate and still vulnerable to dragon mind tricks, they turn you into the last Dragon Knight.
Ah. But did they actually do it, or they trick you into thinking they did it?
They actually do it. Then you have to gain the power to actually turn into a dragon, which is another 4 or 5 hour quest if you aren't using the developer console like I am. And after that, I quite enjoy the portions in the game where you get to play as a dragon. I think there have been some complaints about the mechanics of it, and it's maybe not as fluid combat as it could be, but I still always found those moments enjoyable because, I bought the game to play as a dragon.
Do you get like cool dragon abilities?
Yes, you've got a couple of different neat things that you can invest your skill points into. One is like a fireball where it's a targeted shot of fire at your enemy. You can, of course, upgrade your constant dragon breath. And another very helpful one is an ability called Summon Friend, which summons a wyvern to assist you in combat.
Oh, those wyverns.
And then there are a few others. Not quite dragons.
Okay, cool. Now, is this supposed to be considered to be like a corrupting influence, or like why would everyone not want to have the option of turning into a dragon?
It is it's not that the influence itself corrupts you, it's that some people just are corrupt and use the power for evil means.
Okay.
Like, you can deal with 2 previous Dragon Knights as you decide to... Well, one you have to kill, the other you get to decide what to do with in the course of becoming a Dragon Knight yourself. So, the main bad guy in this game is a man named Damien the Damned One. Which, first of all, not a subtle title.
It's a bit on the nose, right?
Well, the name Damien is also pretty on the nose, given that was the name of the kid in The Omen.
They doubled up on it. Oh, man.
But I take it from your reaction, he has nothing to do with the game Original Sin.
I mean, I didn't... I say, like you said, like these RPGs, you can waste a lot of time, so we wasted a lot of time, like, I don't know, maybe you can't do this in the previous games, but you can, like, press a key to, like, hide in a bush, or, like, summon a bush, whatever you are, and I did that a lot. So a lot of time wasted hiding in bushes, and there was, like, we made it to, like, some, like, rift in reality that some gnome or something was taking care of. But I don't believe I met the central villain in that game in my time.
Okay.
In my time playing.
So in this game, there's a concept called soul binding, where, for example, you can bind your soul with the soul of a demon to make you both immortal. But there's also some issues with the way it works.
Okay, that's
so, like, for example, the guy you have to kill to retake the dragon battle tower has done that. But if you find out the name of the demon, you can summon up the demon and then kill either the demon or the person who did the soul binding, and it will basically make it all for naught.
Okay, so are there... Maybe you don't know this yet, but are there a lot of different ways this story can end, or is this...
This is a very on-the-rails ending. There's only one ending, to my knowledge, at least in the first part of the game. The DLC, I don't know yet, because I have to actually get to the end of the DLC. So, the way the game ends initially, I'm really glad they came out with DLC that hopefully changes the ending to make it to be not so absolutely god-awful.
You want to give a quick, brief synopsis of what makes it so awful?
I'm going to go over that real quick. So, the entire game, you're being told by people, okay, so what you have to do to make it so that Damien can be killed is you have to resurrect this woman, the woman who corrupted him, or, who is named Igurna, which, because of the way he did his soul bind with her, he is currently immortal. Well, you go through the game, and you do that. You prevent Igurna from ever having died in the first place.
Okay.
And then it turns out, no, that's not what you were supposed to do. Actually, that just made him actually immortal, and now everyone is screwed.
Okay, the old bait and switch on you then.
The old bait and switch, which completely ticked me off the first time I played through, because it is such an unsatisfying ending to a game where I think the first playthrough took me 20 hours or so, maybe longer, because of how much of a grind the game is.
Oh, man. Yeah. Games like that do not end satisfyingly are really, those will really get you.
And as I think I've stated before, I'm not opposed to a bittersweet ending or even an outright tragedy.
Yeah.
But it has to be what the game is building to, and that is not what the game was building to, because it just raises so many freaking questions which have no answers. But yes, hopefully I will finish the DLC and then get a much more satisfying ending where we actually kill Damien, or at least drive him back.
Yeah, or at least, do something that you had set out to do the entire time.
Yeah. Because I will tell you right now, next podcast, where if I finish the game and it has a similarly bad ending, I am going to go on about a 10-minute rant.
So look forward to the possibility of that, everybody. Okay, so... But there was, nothing throughout the course of the story that, even hinted at the idea that you were going to get, double-crossed in that fashion, or...
No, because, every time Damien shows up, he makes it very clear he doesn't want you to do this, and tries to kill you. But granted, he does this by sending mooks after you instead of just doing it himself. But still, there's literally no hint at any point in the game that what you're doing is going to screw everyone over the way it does.
See, you're right. I don't have a problem with sad or tragic endings, but there has to be some sort of thread you can go back and go, oh, I should have seen this coming, sort of thing. Because that can make it satisfying, because then you look back and go, oh, that's cool. Connecting the dots is always a fun experience. There's a few movies that do that pretty well, but it's not easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. So hopefully some more Divinity 2, not that Divinity 2. Next podcast.
Unless we go with the plan of possibly having another podcast tomorrow night, as I will not have time to play more between now and then.
You gotta beat it tonight, just in case. Just in case that extra podcast comes through. So.
If you insist.
Okay, and once again, Valen's still setting up out west, so our D&D adventures have not continued in the realm of, oh god, Kirador? Is that? Feels good on the tongue. Am I right? At all?
I am horrible with remembering names. I only remember that our rival kingdom's name is Gary.
That one will stick with you. Kayador. Okay. It's Kayador. But I believe, Jumpblade, you have a few D&D updates to offer us from your adventures.
I do, but I'm becoming very thirsty, so after this update, I will have to go get a drink real quick before we do any further topics.
I can fill that air.
So we played another session in my campaign last night, and we'll probably be doing another session this Saturday because the other Dungeon Master is going to be out of town.
Okay.
So the players last session ticked off a druid lich called the Ghost Lord. This session, they managed to kill him. Along with a enemy from earlier on in the campaign, this horrible-looking thing called a treachery demon.
That doesn't sound good. How many ghosts did they also have to defeat while that...
Surprisingly few.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I imagine they were disappointed as well.
Not a very effective Ghost Lord, then.
No, indeed not.
Bummer. Bummer for him. Them. Lords. Okay. So was that a final boss of sorts, or was that...
It was sort of like a optional mid-boss. The final boss is going to be an aspect of a very powerful dragon, and High Wormlord Azar Cool, a half red dragon cleric.
Half red. So now, what size is a half red dragon cleric?
It just depends on what the other half is.
Okay.
So in this case, the other half is Hobgoblin, so he's about 6 feet tall.
Okay. Just diving into the fantasy here. What? So that means red dragon and a hobgoblin loved each other very much and had a child? That was this?
I'm not certain about the loved each other very much part, considering red dragons, but
things happened.
Potentially, yes. Things happened. There was a child. That child decided to become a cleric of a really nasty red dragon, which was his dad.
Okay, but so like what, like in terms of like power or like defense, what does a half? What does the half get you compared to?
All right, so the half gets you. Give me just one moment to pull everything up here.
Excellent. I demand accurate figures. So.
I figured you did, so I wanted to be as accurate as possible.
Excellent.
All right, so first off, it gives you your creature type changes to dragon.
Okay.
Your natural armor improves by 4. If you don't have natural armor, you just get a +4 natural armor bonus.
Solid.
You get 2 claw attacks and a bite attack.
Dragony. Even if you're
dark...
like a half human?
Yes. A half dragon gains dark vision 60 feet, low light vision, immunity to sleep, paralysis, and energy of the same type as its breath weapon. So if you choose a dragon without a breath weapon, you don't get immunity to any energy type.
Okay.
Like Fang dragons, for example, you would not get immunity to any energy type since they don't have a breath weapon.
Okay.
Now, would
you describe this as more dragon-looking person or more hobgoblin-looking person?
A mix of both. I can show you what High Wormlord Azar Cool looks like real quick.
Please do.
I would characterize him as looking kind of underwhelming.
High Wormlord does,
Yeah, it brings up a...
Sure, I've even come close to spelling this correctly in my attempt to find it.
You probably have not. So...
I've got a lot of drawings of scantily clad women, so probably not.
I sent you the link to a picture of High Wormlord Azar Cool.
Copy. Paste. Okay. Kind of big blue guy.
Yeah.
His hands are very big.
His hands are very big.
And there's lightning coming from his eyes. Okay. Not his dad's skull, I assume, is his shield. That would be dark.
Nah, this is not Cubone.
Oh, what a tragic Pokemon. See if I can throw this up here real quick.
But yes, that is the sort of final boss of the campaign, who is going to be a real pain in the butt to deal with, because since I have a rather high-powered party, I'm restatting him a little bit to be a little more of a challenge than he would otherwise be.
Okay. Okay, interesting. And do you think they'll get to this guy in the next 1 or 2 sessions, or do they still have a ways to go?
they've still got a ways to go. I'd say within the next 4 to 6 sessions.
Okay. Now, does that mean it's in a different location entirely, or is this kind of like the labyrinthine final dungeon kind of thing?
It's a case of they've got to deal with the Red Hand of Doom horde trying to march on the capital city before they go and deal with him, because he is not with the main army. He's off doing his own thing, trying to summon an aspect of something nasty.
Okay. Bad clericing.
Bad clericing.
Okay. Okay. And so, Gnomish Wanderer is what edition is this? This is Pathfinder still, right? Is that correct? Or
Pathfinder / 3.5.
Okay. 3.5. And our game, when it continues, and it will continue, probably, is 5th edition. I think. Right?
You are correct.
Okay.
Speaking of which, I saw my local gaming store selling some source books for 5th edition that I think would catch the interest of some people in this group.
Oh, really?
Which Lord of the Rings source books.
Oh.
For adventures in the Lord of the Rings world, along with ways to make Lord of the Rings-esque characters.
That sounds good. I enjoy Lord of the Rings. I've been to Hobbiton.
I believe you.
I think they've made it cooler since I've been there, but still. Okay. Yeah, I hope we get to play a little bit more. I'd like to get a little more experience with 5th edition, because at least the games I've listened to as like podcasts I've enjoyed, but I haven't really played myself much. And is 5th edition the newest one still, or has there been one after that?
5th edition is still the newest one. It is currently still supported and looks like it will continue to be for quite some time. There hasn't been news of Wizards of the Coast wanting to do a new edition yet, or any sort of hints of that.
Okay. How long like a rough? How long has 5th edition been out now?
That's a good question.
It feels like it's been a bit. I know the Adventure Zone was all 5th edition, I believe.
Since 2014.
Okay, so not too bad then.
Not too bad. It's got at least another 2 years before they try and replace it, I think.
Gotcha.
And that's only if it ends up not being very successful, which all indications are, judging by how many people are making third-party books for it and things like that it is very successful.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it seems, at least in my neophyte understanding or kind of experience with D&D overall, I at least liked what I heard about how it was kind of different from 4th edition, which is the one I played probably most, which is still not very much. But kind of in terms of making it a little more modular, maybe, in terms of how different people wanted to do things, in terms of you could still kind of get really into the dice rolls and that sort of stuff, but you could also kind of smooth things along a bit to kind of keep story moving. If I'm at all correct in that summation, but I always like the things that kind of give you the option of either going as deep as you want or kind of saying, okay, we have to get out of this hallway, otherwise I'm going to go insane. So, okay.
Yeah, you don't want a Final Fantasy game where you run along a hallway for 30 hours and that's your tutorial level.
No. Was that a shot at 13? Is that?
I don't know which one it was specifically a shot at. I just remember Penny Arcade taking a shot at one of the Final Fantasies for that exact reason.
I enjoyed Final Fantasy 13, and I will say that. But yeah, it was more linear. But...
I mean, it's probably still better than 8 was.
Well, I beat 13. I have not beaten 8, so at least by that measure, for me, yes. The combat, I will say, was a very cool system in 13. I enjoyed it in terms of the ways you could switch between things and stuff. Whereas 8, farming enemies for cure spells drove me insane.
Yeah, the combat system from 8 sounded very not fun to deal with.
The junction system was okay. So we'll let you go get that beverage, I think, before we dive into our topic here.
I'll be back in 2 minutes or less.
All right. A little primer for everybody. Get an example of what we're going to talk about here. The differences in game music as they get what we're looking at here. Red Wings theme, Final Fantasy IV, went from this in the Super Nintendo version too. This, the DS remake. And that just doesn't hit the same for me. We're going to see what Junkblade's opinion is, though. Okay.
I return, and someone is apparently bringing me the Pepsi.
Excellent. That's how we do it. Okay, I'm going to need you to turn the stream audio on. I'm going to play clips of... So I kind of introed the topic of like how game music changes with remasters. Like it's not just graphics necessarily. And what our opinions on that kind of are. So one of my go-to examples is Final Fantasy IV, the Super Nintendo soundtrack. I'll play an example.
All right. Okay. I like this.
Powerful horns and solid drum beat.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
So that was the original. Then we went, when it was remade for the DS, that became this.
The difference is kind of subtle, but it's there.
It is, right? So it just doesn't, kind of hit as much for me. It's not as oomph that I really kind of liked about that soundtrack, and that kind of carries throughout most of the songs, and just kind of like the maybe precision of the Super Nintendo soundtrack compared to the DS one. I'm probably not using it even close to correct terms for this kind of thing, but
are you able to pull up the example I mentioned, which was Blizzard Buffalo's stage in X3 versus in the original versus the remake?
What system was the
Super Nintendo versus GameCube?
GameCube. Okay, I'll file. Here's the original. I'll see if I can.
It's the final.
Okay, let's see if I found it. A little anime cutscene here.
Yeah, I did kind of like the anime cutscenes of the bosses for X3. See how much worse that sounds?
Yeah, it just doesn't have. So this is interesting because it's we've both come up with two like Super Nintendo games that were then updated, right? And I just think maybe what we've come up across here is there's just something to that Super Nintendo sound chip and how it. I don't know.
Yeah,
you're right. It just doesn't. It just doesn't like I think we were talking about before we started. It just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
It just doesn't fit like a Mega Man X game to me.
Yeah, and it, like all the rest of the music sounded largely identical to the original.
Yeah.
But Blizzard Buffalo Stage specifically, as soon as I played it, I was like, wait, there's no way it sounded like that.
Yeah.
And I was right. It didn't sound anything like that in the original.
Yeah. Well, and Blizzard, that could, Blizzard Buffalo is probably one of the more unique stage, songs in a Mega Man game. It's not that usual high energy kind of song you usually think of. So that that's a tougher thing to kind of adapt, maybe because it's so different.
Maybe.
See, I think another example was definitely, I think, Final Fantasy VII between the PS1 and the PC version.
Now let's take a look at that.
Yeah, what's a good? Wait for the ad to finish. Really good.
I'm not. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, I accidentally muted the stream again.
That's all right.
So, yeah,
but Final Fantasy VII, you've heard it, I'm sure. But let me see. This. Like the horns just kind of overtake it completely.
Mm-hmm.
And it just doesn't. Yeah, it just doesn't. It's either a mixing thing or just the sounds. It just doesn't have the same feel.
Yeah.
That you get. This is an interesting thing because, I don't know if what we're saying has any actual merit or is this just, this is how I played it when I was 12 years old, and that's what this game is to me. I will say I've orchestral versions of video game music I've really enjoyed, certain ones. Like I went to a Legend of Zelda symphony concert. That was a blast, and they played a bunch of old stuff, rearranged. But it could just be that music not specifically designed for, like, I don't know if it's MIDI or what that mid step was between kind of chip tunes and just being able to put in actual music. Well, not actual music, but instrumental music. But I know there's soundtracks from those systems that I really enjoyed. So I wonder if this just something is kind of lost in translation, or if this is wholly nostalgia. What do you think?
I don't think it's wholly nostalgia, because the point of these remasters is to appeal to both new people and people who played the old version of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So you should be trying to appeal to their nostalgia and not change things too much.
Yeah.
Changing the stage music is actually a substantial change to a game.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially a Mega Man game where you can spend a lot of time on a stage, right?
Yes.
So.
And as a result, I think trying to faithfully adapt the music to the new version is incredibly important, because anyone who's played the game originally and does remember the music, even just on an instinctual level, will just feel like something is off when playing back through the game.
They literally had to patch in the original music to Final Fantasy VII on PC.
Wow.
That's how serious that. Which is one of those things I'm extremely curious if that remake ever comes out. Because there's zero chance you're going to have that PS1 music on those graphics.
Yeah, good luck on that remake, though, because like I said in a previous stream, it's like they're moving backwards with the updates.
Oh yeah, no, that thing is in serious trouble. But it'll come out eventually, because it's just going to print money, at least for the first one. Like it'll come out eventually, everyone's going to get it still.
I'm worried about a Duke Nukem Forever from it, because
I would be almost astounded if, like, I don't think what you're saying doesn't have a chance of happening, but the fact that there's already such a base of a game there,
that they would have to be like deliberately trying to make it bad.
Yeah, you're right. That could very well happen, but that would be like almost a monumentally larger mess up than although and doing that is saying something, considering how much of a mess Duke Nukem Forever was.
And I've heard people who had, like, not amazing things to say about Duke Nukem Forever, but if they didn't spend anywhere near the full price on it, they tended to consider it generally worth playing, if not a great game. But given how much people were anticipating it and how long it took to come out, that's damning with faint praise.
Yeah. Okay. So now, do you have any like good examples of like music that was like updated and you enjoyed? I always like to have some positive aspect of it. But I'm having trouble thinking of something.
I'm having trouble thinking of something too, and my issue is usually the version of a song I first get introduced to, unless it's bad, is like the song to me, and then I don't like a new version as much.
That's okay. So I can't think of one. And actually, this actually kind of goes in a different thing that I thought was very cool. But if we look at Super Mario 64 castle theme, ad. You'd think I would have been more prepared for this. Okay.
You'd think, but I don't think anyone watches our stream for preparation.
That's true. Castle theme. Very good.
I almost want to do like a game where, okay, you've played this game. This is. Do you remember the original soundtrack? And if I play the new version of the soundtrack, can you tell the difference?
That could be it. Okay, so then Super Mario Odyssey had a throwback level to Super Mario 64, and so they had. And and maybe this is something we were talking about in where in the N64 was much closer than the Super Nintendo at kind of emulating orchestral music, as crazy as that might sound. But I feel like the actual orchestral version of this kind of at least kept that mood and that feeling.
Yeah, it's a smoother version of the same song.
Yes.
You can tell the difference, but at the same time, you still...
It's me.
Yeah.
You...
So yeah, so that's something so I think that's kind of a good example, and maybe not as difficult necessarily as the ones we were talking about. But then something else Super Mario Odyssey did. I don't know if you they had areas of the level where you could go into a pipe and it would turn into a 2D Mario section for a little bit.
That's pretty awesome.
And so the music would actually turn into a chiptune version of the kind of a backwards of what we're talking about here. So like one of
it's really cool.
Yeah, so I'll play Steam Gardens is one of my favorite songs in the game. So.
Okay.
Surfer guitar going. So just a very cool, like, I love that song. But so then when you go into the 8-bit version, the music changes to So and I know I'm sure if you like kind of broke that down and like remove some of the channels, maybe there's some backing there that's not necessarily chiptune or or that kind of music. But I like that's such a cool kind of just little like small detail kind of represent that transition. But I also think they did an excellent job of transitioning those songs from full on orchestra to electronic.
I agree, and I also feel like there's an inherent difference between going from like a modern song to and turning it into the 8-bit chiptune version to taking the old version and making a modern song out of it.
That's true.
In that taking the old version and trying to make a modern song out of it feels almost disrespectful to the original.
And also, and I'm not going to pretend that that they actually, programmed these songs in NES hardware sort of thing. So there's no it's definitely a much more souped up version of that aspect, and trying to simplify songs because I'm sure they probably wrote NES soundtracks and stuff on a more substantial platform, and then kind of boil down those melodies to the essential elements that they could then put into the game. But so that's very true. But yeah, it's a tricky thing, I think. But So we'll see one of these little goofy thought experiments I'm going to play on my son is get his untainted opinion on some of these when he's older. Because maybe maybe the and there's plenty of young kids that I'm sure really enjoy 8-bit, 16-bit music from that era. But it also could be we're a product of our time kind of thing. So.
It could definitely be a product of our time.
Well, I think we got. I'll tell you what, we came up with more examples than I thought we were going to. So that's
agreed. Have we hit our 1 hour benchmark, or do we need me to rant about Fable?
We are at 57 minutes, so we could probably pad it out with waiting for any questions that the chat might have, and save that hot Fable rant for the kickoff of the next episode, I think. Well, a little preview. Is this about the Fable trilogy as a whole, or is this about one specific Fable game?
The Fable trilogy as a whole, because I have played 3 of the 4 games they came out with, and nobody cares about the last game because it was an on-the-rails style thing released for the Kinect.
Ooh. Was that Fable Journey or something? Was that what that was called?
It was something like that. Like, it was so bad even the studio was ashamed of it.
Oh, that's not a great sign.
Yeah. So that's the only one I'm really not going to talk about beyond like a 30-second, 1-minute little rant about why did you think this was a good idea.
Gotcha. Well, that's a good primer. Wait a little bit longer if we've got any questions. Oh, I gotta go back and remember all the songs I put in there to credit them. Say, it'll be interesting to see if this episode stays up on YouTube. A lot more tunes than we usually do.
True, but I would assume
it would require somebody watching it on YouTube. Is that's a fair point? Other than me.
Not where I was going with that, but also fair.
Okay, we do have a question. We think manipulating the level. So that's something we kind of hinted at. Maybe it has something to do with the mixing. Do you think? I think definitely for the Final Fantasy VII example that we played, the mixing seemed to be maybe a major issue with that because you just everything else was kind of drowned out of that theme. With from the horns. But yeah, I agree. I agree about the softer sound to them, and that's kind of what that. I don't want to say harshness because that's not a good audio word, but maybe precision makes more sense. Kind of maybe a sharpness sort of thing that I enjoyed in those soundtracks. Favorite video game music, Junkblade.
Okay, so that's kind of a difficult question because for one, I tend to like video game inspired music, like Miracle of Sound or The Aviators, because they do music inspired by Dark Souls.
Okay.
That sort of thing. I would probably have to say any basically Silent Hill's music. I have several songs on my player because I just think the singer has a great voice and they're nice, eerie songs.
Okay, interesting. I have not listened to any Silent Hill music, I can tell you that. So.
I have a few different songs I can link you that are favorites of mine.
Okay.
Legend of Zelda series has fantastic music.
Absolutely.
And even the Pokemon series has music that is instantly recognizable.
Better than you would think.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. Yeah, that is a tough question. Let's say Legend of Zelda for sure. A good number of the Final Fantasy games I think are fantastic. Super Metroid's
Final Fantasy
good music.
Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
To say that's one of my recent faves on the playlist has been Crystal Chronicles for sure. Actually, yeah, the music and co-op are the two main reasons I'm going to get that game again, I think.
Same here. Sound of the Wind, the music that plays when you make a new character, is fantastic.
Yeah. And I've actually like Castlevania, the NES Castlevania games actually have some fantastic songs.
I haven't actually played a Castlevania game, and since I've finished the anime, I need to.
Yeah, I would highly recommend Castlevania 1 and 3. 2 was got a little weird.
I think 3 is what the anime
NES games did, but
yeah. Let's see, Super Mario 2, Zelda 2.
Yep. Oh yeah. Interesting. Let's say Mega Man 3 is probably I know everyone goes crazy over Mega Man 2, but I think Mega Man 3 is underrated. Let's say Mario, like there's some real Mario 64 is probably one of my favorites.
Mario 64 is one of my favorites. The Mario 64, I would absolutely not classify as a perfect game, but it is definitely a game that has far fewer flaws than many others, and it does make sense since it's a flagship game, but most of my problems with the flaws are just personally not finding certain levels to be any fun.
Well, and now, like, the camera is a little wonky, but the fact that was a launch game for Nintendo's first 3D system, and they nailed 3D platforming in a way that maybe Banjo-Kazooie equaled, but other than that, I can't really think of another game that reached those heights. Is bananas like that. Like their first shot at it, and they just nailed that. And the music was fantastic. Mario's always kind of just fun, upbeat, and sometimes you need to hear that. But
yeah, exactly, and that's why I alluded to this earlier in the stream, but why I don't have an issue with a bittersweet or outright sad ending most of the time.
Yeah,
because sometimes you just need that disparity, but it has to be within keeping of the game. It wouldn't be a Mario game if it ended with Mario looking like he was going to save the day, and then Bowser just stabbed him in the back and murdered him.
Yes. Unless they really laid those breadcrumbs well, then oh man.
Unless they really laid those breadcrumbs well, or Nintendo was just like, screw it, we're tired of making money and being a successful company, let's just end it all.
No more Mario! He's dead! Oh. So that probably wasn't a great answer to your question, since we named like 7 different series, and I know I forgot some. But,
final answer, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Oh. Powerful final answer. I can't do a final answer. Shovel Knight's fantastic. Super Mario RPG, great.
Darkest Dungeon has great music.
I say video game music, criminally underrated in the general space. It's getting better, but
Transistor music. That was. I mentioned that as a game I would never play again because of the ending.
Yeah.
But the music is fantastic.
Supergiant. I think it's Supergiant games. Bastion.
Supergiant games.
Bastion was another
they did
great,
Bastion, Pyre, and a few other things.
Transistor,
but they do fall into the indie developer trap of we've got to make all of our games have sad endings.
Bastion was all right, I think, right? But the music in Bastion was fantastic.
Music in Bastion was fantastic.
Fez, another great soundtrack. Okay, we've butchered answering that question. Hopefully, next time Valen will join us again. And hopefully we've whetted your appetite with those teasers we sprinkled throughout the episode.
Indeed.
But until next time, Junkblade, thank you for joining me.
Not a problem. I was happy to do it.
And have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone.